Who won Comic-Con? Star Trek. Episode 317 of Trekland Tuesdays Live. Boom. With me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming right at you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 by way of a Trekland Trek or two. Hey, for some sanity, clarity, and the big picture in all things Star Trek, welcome back for another Tuesday. You know, Trekland HQ and everything here in Trekland is also the home of Trekland Treks, where I hope sometime when you get to Los Angeles, you can take a day on your business or personal trip and have set up your own customized away mission with me as your guide. Any of the 50 plus location sites from all the eras of Star Trek that aren't Toronto. You can be your own customized visitor. Check it out. It's good to see everybody for another Tuesday. Yes, do I look like I've lost some weight or I'm a little tanner or something? Was just down at San Diego Comic-Con, again, spreading some sanity, clarity, and the big picture in things Star Trek. And boy, is it a summer when we need some clarity and sanity. We've got double strikes now going on. Remember, some of you remember the week or two before the strike deadline when no one was talking about it? And I said, I feel guilty for not having talked about the strike until we got right up to the eve of the issues, because I was trying to transfer the murmuring here around Los Angeles that was going on as everybody saw this train coming down the track, but it was like the train without the lights on until everyone got smacked in the tunnel in the dark. That's the way it must have felt to the outside world on 2 or 3 days' notice. Anyway, as someone who was there at the writer's strike in 07 and 08 and watched all this happen, I was trying to start giving the world a share. And we had Bill Wilkoff here on an anniversary show from the lines, just the first couple of days of the strike, and a lot of interaction since then. Now the actors are on strike. And, you know, the looming question, talking about the train coming down the track, and I've talked about the last couple of weeks, but in short, what was going to be the impact on Comic-Con San Diego, the granddaddy of them all, big Comic-Con, other interests that became a Hollywood thing because of the proximity to LA, and it became a weekend getaway to go and promote all the new hot movies and TV shows. And that was going to go away, obviously, with the strike this year. The actors far more so than the writers, although the writers being very sensitive to not looking like they're giving a free hand to any of the studios that they're striking against. The MPT, not everybody, the independent producers. And, well, we'll talk about this too. Just so you know, the big picture, everything, clarity and sanity. Some of these waivers that you've been hearing about and saying, oh, why are they getting exceptions? There's been misinformation, misreporting there. Those are not waivers like an exception. Those are waivers given because the producer is an independent that agreed to the SAG and WGA terms. When you heard these one-off actors who are organizing their own little shingles of a production company, there was one series that was some kind of a Christian. I know you're thinking, what? Their company agreed to the terms. These other independent companies, these small projects, agreed to the terms. I think in the July 12th actors' demands, the writers' demands. In other words, they're clear, they're legit. They have been given permission to go. They haven't been given an exception, which is leading to all the memes about if these little boys and girls companies can agree to the current terms, why can't the big boys? That's the spin that's being avoided. Anyway, we all wondered what would be the impact on, even as San Diego Comic-Con veterans, comics fans, some of them my friends, were totally happy to see the frou-frou go away. There were still hotel rooms hard to come by. The economy of San Diego is not going to tank in the next year, much less over the weekend. It was a little easier to get into some restaurants, but that depended on what time of day it was. But these are the questions in mind as we got down. The other question being that so many of the studios, because of the strikes, especially with the faces of the actors, again, the writers going, hey guys, remember us? Especially with the actors gone, why, of everybody from Netflix on down, Warner Brothers, Paramount Plus, still opted to go ahead with their Hall H for Star Trek? Now, I've got to be among those who somewhere on the spectrum of wondering curiously what they were going to do to wondering humorously what they were going to do. And then had the word in advance, a few days in advance, they were going to show those old scientists, the long-awaited crossover animation that not only did they show it early for the crowd in Hall H, but they released it that night along with the Ready Room with Will, background piece for it. And again, all these pieces are very careful to say that since they were the insiders, they sat everyone down for interviews long before the strike, so that's not an issue as far as that goes. There are all kinds of questions, and we talked about this last week, because right around the corner in 2 weeks, for us, even more so than Comic-Con, which is the big table and making sure you have a seat there and being seen, then we dive onto our own family reunion, whether you're there in person or you're experiencing it vicariously online, on the webs, occasionally some live streams. I'll try to add to some of those. But it's our family reunion for just Star Trek alone. And how is the strike going to affect this? And all the confusion about cosplay and panels and who could appear and what you could talk about. And a lot of that's been mostly clarified. And it's a different vibe for both conventions, both events that are right here on our radar right now. Hall H, the big production place for all the productions, was basically empty. And they did not try to fill it. It sat with crickets. More people got into Hall H when they wanted to, including the Star Trek. Hall H was always full, but half the time for a Star Trek event, you had it half full for the people who were there all day waiting for their event slice 3 or 4 or 5 hours later. But you knew this Hall H was full of Trek. That 5,000, 6,000 people. It's a different vibe that Vegas will be, because Vegas is all Trek-centric, and it's very actor-centric. And, of course, you've got your one-to-one interactions, but there are still the panels, and they kind of feel obligatory. And you know what? It's a good thing that Paramount delicensed STLV, that they delicensed creation for this, even though the follow-on licensee has since walked away from the license. The only licensed event that's out there now, including the departure of Destination Star Trek, losing its license. The only thing licensed now is the cruise. So the marketing and promotional end, all our friends that work in promoting the shows, and that team has expanded greatly. That's one good thing. And they're rapidly learning the fan base and the property. That's always helpful. But they have no say over Vegas. If STLV had still been a licensed show, chances are it would have shut down or turned into some kind of a one-day mini thing. That's kind of a silver lining here going on. But still, people are curious about what that looks like, what that's going to look like. And that question, that we're 10 days away, things are still being settled and schedules settled and all that. But what I can talk about is what the experience was like at Comic-Con. So for Star Trek, there was going to be the Hall H presentation, which would have had actors and people associated with the three current, with Strange New and Lower Decks, and yeah, Discovery getting glorified for its final season, even though it's technically been let go. But they're going to glorify and promote the hell out of that 5th season as the finale and pay homage to the groundbreaking status, yes, and all the bruises and the warts and everything all that Discovery pioneered, coming back and being the first Trek to stream in this crazy modern age. So none of that happened, obviously. They showed the episode, made some announcements. My friend Scott Mantz emceed the poor thing all by his lonesome, made the announcements, had the promotional trailers back up. So we got the basic news out, right? September 7th is going to be the Lower Decks premiere with 2 episodes. This is all, you've heard this. They've had the trailer out for Discovery. They've got the trailer out for all of this. They showed those old scientists the much vaunted visit to Toontown for Strange New Worlds, or Toontown visits us, although it goes both ways. And then the news of Subspace Rhapsody, which is a perfect name for a musical Star Trek, 2 down the line with a very ordinary, very mundane, very exciting, not animation, not musical, but a regular, a plain old D episode of Strange New Worlds featuring Klingon ambassador, and it looks like some post-traumatic stress. Okay, this is all news you can get anywhere. What I wanted to share with you today is beyond that. And I just started, as the weekend wore on, look, I went down with a lighter footprint. I think I mentioned this. I only did one. They have what they call Autograph Alley, where you can get a table for 4 hours twice in the week. I only did one day this time. I went very light, didn't take the banner down, went very light. I had a panel which went through several iterations. I wound up with the two amazing art directors, Liz Kloskowski and Kit Sherlin, who were among those splitting up sets. Liz had the under Dave Blass, production designer, with working with both of them, but they split the sets up among set designers. And Liz is the one who had the Titan sets and, of course, the Enterprise D bridge and the Helios 12, who we've had on Portal 47. Kit, who I'm going to get after this live exchange, it was his first convention ever. Liz had talked to fans before virtually with me and others. She'd just been up with Dave at Star Trek Tours and talked to a small, like 200 people in a loosey-goosey environment. She'd never been to big time San Diego Comic-Con and sat in a room with 420 seats. And we know because our panel was, well, it's not sold out. There's no tickets, but we were SRO. They turned maybe 20 people away at the end, and who knows how many walked. So it was an awesome experience for the fans. And for those two, the pictures are up. It was a great time. But that was Sunday, and there was lots going on before that, lots of time to observe. The Hall H extravaganza, as such, was at 1 o'clock on Saturday. So we got down Sunday evening for preview night, and I'm looking around. A lot of just things started happening here. I personally was making a big move, as I noticed in the program, lots of Star Trek people there. Now, I'm not talking about Star Trek panels. I'm talking about, so Neville Page has a book coming out of his work. Titan Books was there to promote it. He had a solo panel with the support team on Saturday. Yay, that was a thing. A lot of people, Noga Landau, who is the showrunner for Starfleet Academy, who was at Strike Day that I didn't get to meet. I got to meet after the panel of a lot of showrunners. It was a TV 101 for people wanting to know what showrunning was like when you step up from a writer and then you showrun and how you staff a room. Now, look, these are all writers who are on strike right now. The WGA is not being quite, they obviously don't want to support the people they're striking against right now. That would be giving away the milk or the cow or both. The actors are the ones who are very, very face conscious and are very, very on top of this. The writers are a little less reticent about not talking about their projects. They don't want to go, they don't want anything to benefit the studios. If you're a fan, if you're a one-off journalist, if you're somebody doing archival interviewing for the future, it's not so touchy, and yet it is with a lot of them. But it's not so clear-cut, as none of the actors want to be seen as doing anything, aside from it being their strike rules. And yeah, we're interpreting all this about cosplay, and there's loopholes. Basically, if the person they would work for is somebody they're striking against. And if they're not, it's basically, that includes animation studios if they're not tied into a big one, game companies. There's a lot of work they can do overseas as well, as long as none of the money involved gets back to someone they're striking, the MTPTP, the motion picture group, because independent producers are not part of that group. Producers overseas aren't part of that group. And they are not, especially the writers, are not working. They're very much letting the other foreign countries know that not, as was exposed once, South Korean writers trying to be hired for a Hollywood project. No, no, no. Lots of solidarity among the sister guilds and unions for actors and writers and other crews, etc., around the world. So no scabs coming across the ponds to help out. But here in the now, a lot of writers talking about their works. There was a panel that my friends Drea and Brian, their Psychology of series that they do, that I was a guest on in time past. How I Met Dr. Ali was through Dr. Drea Lettermondi and Brian that works for Shout Factory. They had originally had a panel with Terry Metalis and Todd Stashwick, a Picard panel for Saturday evening at 7. Well, Todd bowed out very early on because of the strike. Early on into the strike, 10 days ago, 10 days prior, and had Chris Monfett and Matt Kimura, who were also on the writing staff, join Terry, who had also worked with him back on 12 Monkeys. So they lost Todd. They got 2 writers. It was still going to be a Picard panel by striking writers. But none of this was Comic-Con. It's not a studio event. Terry wound up having to bow out because, well, a very big meeting, not about Star Trek. He had a good business meeting to go to, a meeting, not a public event, not promoting. And the two guys, so Chris and Matt, held that on their own. But it was still a Picard panel, happened Saturday night. It still was at 7 p.m. on Saturday. Party time's happening. People are out drinking. But it still had 3/4 of its room there. So what I'm getting to here is, number one, Star Trek was being represented on a lot of the panels, different panels of subject matter where you had representatives from a lot of different series or different shows. And there was a Star Trek person in that mix, aside from the Star Trek panels. So that was happening. And it was great to see so many Star Trek folks be a part of that. On top of that. So that's why I didn't get to the animated 50th anniversary panel. I was seeing a couple of Star Trek people that I wanted to say hello to again at a side panel, which brings up the whole question. Twice this weekend, I wanted to see Star Trek things that conflicted. There was the higher profile Star Trek panel and Star Trek people on a panel that I also wanted to see them. I'd either met them or I wanted to see them again or hear them talk for the first time. And I would choose the first timers over the big event, because figuring the big event is going to be covered. It's going to be out there. I wasn't here to cover. I wasn't being journalist. So I wasn't working for anybody covering anything and having to do. And I've done that before, and that's a big deal. But that's why I missed out on some of the free pins and all that. So I'll work my ways behind the scenes and come away with some of the goodies and the posters and all that. But what it let me do was realize how Star Trek is permeating this. And what it reminded me of is, look, I'm not a comics guy. I have talked about this before. I think 2006 was the first time I went to Comic-Con. After Enterprise was down, the Berman era was done. Maybe the JJ movie was announced, but for all intents and purposes, nothing intensive about it. Star Trek, as we knew it, was dead for a while. It was just going to be that way. It was stupid. There was much more money to be made if they just had their heads on straight. But between the bean counters and the mundane suits in the world of 2005 and 2006, amid the Paramount divorce and all that chaos, the Viacom divorce, wasn't going to be fresh Star Trek for a while. And my comics friends dragged me or persuaded me to come down. And I saw everything but Star Trek. Within a couple of years, I took advantage. I took some books down and we signed at the little 4-hour table things. No big deal. I was in the program grid. That was nice if anybody wanted to see me. 2 or 3 years later, I submitted a panel in the way that's now familiar to people. And the first year or two, just some of my solo Trekland content panels, talking about, behind the scenes stuff. And at the time it was the fallow time, so we're all still navel gazing back at Enterprise, DS9, Voyager, TNG, the original series, anniversaries or a prompt, whatever. And what dawned on me was, I never saw anybody wearing Star Trek. It was a Comic-Con. You didn't expect it. That's why you have Vegas. You get to go see your peeps in 2 weeks. But for right now, you're kind of trying to hold the flag. You're trying to stake a little bit of a ground. If I saw anybody wearing anything, a uniform, a t-shirt, a vague t-shirt, if somebody was vague shirting, I would get a picture. The first 2 or 3 or 4 years I went, I would get 4 or 5 shots of cosplay for the whole 4 days. There were the years when I decided, looking at the catalog, that the program guide, that my little dinky Star Trek panel, a couple of years we had podcasters in, were the only Trek panels in the whole campus. Now, that all started to change. The years of promoting the movies were big years, but those tended to be big one-off movie promotions. Not a lot of stickum for small panels, fan or pro. And finally that began to change with the coming of the 50th, with the studio getting involved the year Spock was on a cover. I've talked about some of the earliest TTLs, much less my blogs. Star Trek finally started to come out from the fallow fields. 2015, 2016 was the big 50th, Spock on the cover, and the preview panel that Brian Fuller hosted with Shatner and Jerry Ryan and Brent Spiner, I believe. Go down the line, people from every era to talk about Star Trek in general, with a little bit of talk by then, and a couple of features, the infamous features of the too soon visual effects for Discovery, and we were often running on the Discovery controversies of the week. But that was 2016. And from then on, there's been a slow build with the studio staffing up crews to come back and have a footprint. So thankfully, no longer are my little panels the only Star Trek at Comic-Con San Diego. Again, all about having a chair alongside the other big boys, the other big franchises, the way we've talked about it lately. But look, here's just some things I noticed. Yeah, so many panels or people repping, even from Discovery and Picard, which are dead shows, although Discovery has to be promoted. But people, professionals on panels, fan panels, seeing friends have more Star Trek fan panels in there. And every time, whether it was professionals or fans, I was not in the room, but I saw this happen enough. Every time, whoever was there, if they were IATSE, like art guilds, set dressers and set decorators and production designers, prop folk, at one panel I attended, Liz's other panel for beginning indie filmmakers and talking, it was a how-to. Whatever the level of professional or fan panel that I saw or heard about later, always a statement in support of the strikers, the actors and writers. And a reminder that 2 years ago, 2021, IATSE came this close to presaging these strikes with all the issues going on. The short seasons, the overwork, the no transparency, and even saying what they are going to pay you, much less what they are paying you. All of that. And AI looming over the, even not as big as it is now, but all of that, they came a hair's breadth only because of the structure of the way the voting went. They actually had a strike vote 51-49, but it was kind of like the electoral college of the thing. They narrowly averted a strike then. So yeah, it's been a paradigm sea change. These issues affect everybody. That's why all of Hollywood, the Teamsters, everybody, people, the IBE, Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and municipal workers and teachers, they're all in support of this because it's not just Hollywood people. It's symptomatic of what's gone on that needs to change the last 40 years. That said, every panel that mentioned that would get applaud. The fandom is so in support of it. That's why all the talk about supporting and not so, some people are so eager and zealous to show their support that they may be, I don't want to say harming themselves, because it's all fandom and it's all, it's all froth at the end of the day. It's what gets you through your sane streak when you've come home from work at the end of the day. Someone was just mentioned, Roddenberry was talking about this last night on Mission Log. He's going to suspend some of the Roddenberry podcast activities in light of that, if they interface in things that are on the table. That's all kind of being decided right now. But point being, there are barometers apart from the strikes, apart from what any studio or company spent money on. There's grassroots fandom, and I started seeing the results of 2 years, one solid year, most of a second year, even in the craziness of pandemic and everybody zooming to stay together and stay sane and get the word out, produce shows, talk about them when they air, keep our sanity. Something about the bonding effect and the Zoom effect, like we've been virtual Zooming, I've been since 2015, but for the world to catch up and see it, and now everybody's on the same page. No one sits around and wonders how does this streaming thing work? That's very 2017. We're there now. Now we're into the economics and the finances of all of it, but we're there now. And how fandom survived the pandemic and the silver linings of that. And then to come out and have a full year of Trek last year, I think we're starting to see the dividends of that. I'm just saying, those years when I would take maybe 4 or 5 shots of anybody remotely in a Star Trek get up over the whole 4 days and a night. Folks, I'm here to tell you, at least one out of every 20 people I saw, and we're talking 150,000 people, was in some kind of a Star Trek. When we went to eat on Sunday afternoon, we went into the Union, not the student union. There's in Gaslamp called the Union, and I looked, and there was a table with one of the 3 or 4 people, Star Trek uniform on. These 3 or 4 people, Star Trek uniform on. These 3 or 4 people, Star Trek uniform on. These 3 or 4 people, Star Trek T-shirt. it really started to add up. And the fact that our panel on Sunday at 1 of the art directors, and Kit and Liz are so funny. They're like, why did you set us up a signing time afterwards? No one's going to want our autograph. And I said, people half the time, they just want to come talk. And you always have the crowd at Comic-Cons. You have the crowd outside the room. You have to vacate for the next panel to come in. And if you have hangers on, they want to come out and sit in the corridor and talk. Sometimes that lasts 10 minutes. Sometimes it lasts 30 minutes. And if it goes on long enough, somebody will say, well, let's all go to so-and-so and sit down and have a drink, and or we'll buy you guys drinks or whatever, depending on schedules. I said, let's get you in the grid and have you have a legit signing space. Give it 15 minutes. We walk down and there you are. Well, funny story. Not only did we have 420 people crammed in, we had the people hanging on afterwards. We went down. I had braced both of them. It was their first Comic-Con, Kit especially, and went from nervous to become a pro by the end. You instantly get it. It's like watching an actor at their first con get out on stage. What am I going to talk about? I have nothing prepared. Heard somebody say one time, it's the only, telling an actor getting ready for their first Star Trek convention from the cast, saying it's the only time in your life you're in entertainment and the audience loves you before you even open your mouth. It's very settling for nervous actors who are not understanding how this whole thing works on that end. And then, of course, they're all old pros after that. But no, we had got down, and the long, the Disneyland type queue, the stalls winding back and forth. We're totally empty. 3 or 4 people hit them up, had them sign their program books. They didn't have anything to sign. They're both saying, I have nothing to sign. I got no headshots. Haha. We're just art directors. Art directors that worked on the most fabulous season, at least on Public Barometers ever, in that D bridge. Even Kit did the Borg corridors, the District 6 with all the Bajoran and Ferengi and Cardassian callouts, and all of that was in his resume. We sat and looked at the empty stalls in front of us, and I said, well, guys, I'm sorry. This is what I thought might happen, but hey, I just thought you were entitled to have a sit down. And 5 minutes later, we had a guy in a Picard jacket ask if he could come have us sign something. And I thought he was standing with the next line over. And after he walked over, somebody behind him said, can I get something signed too? And I'm like, well, this is funny. I had totally braced them to, we were making fun of the empty line. And I'm just like, but you had the experience, kids. No. What we thought was an empty set of stalls that we walked down actually began with the first one with people in it. There were at least 40 or 50 people lined up who were waiting on us to get our shit together and start signing. And we didn't know they were there until these two said, can we sign something? We were taking pictures of anyway, it was amazing. I was gobsmacked. If there was something that gobsmacked me all weekend, actually a couple things did, but that was the biggest. And I was so happy for them. We had people who weren't even at the panel. They came down when they couldn't get in the panel, or they just found Star Trek which is the point of it all, found Star Trek in the grid. They were there on Sunday. Not much happening on Sunday for Star Trek, but our panel. And they came over at least to get something signed. One person joined Portal 47 in the line. I was gobsmacked. But this is what I mean as a barometer. I'm seeing more people repping Star Trek, seeing more panels. And then on top of that, I did not get over to the installations. I know that's sacrilege. I didn't get over to the lodge, which was all the Paramount Plus things. I didn't get over to the lodge. I didn't get over to the Energize Lounge, but I talked to Tony at their booth. I had a free coupon for a free coffee at the Energize Lounge, and I didn't make it over. Boo on me. I lost Thursday to work. Should have gone Thursday. It's the easiest day. But no. I mean, I was there. I got my cred. There's my pro badge. Okay, yay. Here's my, my panel placard. Okay, yay. Yes, Kit and Liz got away with theirs too. The hotel that we were in, I don't know if this was across all of San Diego. Paramount Plus was a big sponsor this year. Our hotel room key was a Paramount Plus Showtime sponsor. So the studio had put a lot of money in. They weren't having to fly actors or drive actors down. I mean, that was a savings. Nobody had to come down from Toronto or New York. So I guess they saved some bucks there. But then you go on the floor, you see the cosplay. So apparently, when I have to think what it was, there was a company, Pop Galaxy. Apparently, some company is offering women's and men's, I guess, unisex, pull down next generation type pullover bits. But instead of all the regular colors, they were offering it in purple and pink. You could get a pink with, the black accent. I saw at least 3 of those over the weekend. What, gang, this is the weekend of Barbie and Oppenheimer. Or Wednesday, I said, oh, it's a Boppenheimer weekend. Apparently that 4 million other people had the same idea. I mean, shout out to the several women I saw wearing the pink. I was like, what great branding. I just was wondering why we don't have Barbie Trek among all the hashtags. I've tried. Feel free to try to pick it up. It's up to you. But no, it's one of those things. One of those things. I put a few Instagrammies up. There was a wonderful couple dressed as Pike and Una that were standing in line that I've got on my Instagram. And they were in line to go sit in the Pike chair for a photo op in the video bit that you saw a lot of people posting. There was always a line around that. I kidded with them and I said, what's going on here where the captain can't sit in his own chair? Are they having budget cuts at Starfleet and they're renting it out for extra credits? What's going on? And we had a good time. It's a real Saturday after the Hall H that I was not in. I was just watching all the news alerts come on my phone, getting all the press releases for everything everybody was being told in the hall, knowing that I was going to watch these old scientists on my screener that I hadn't had time to watch because it came on Tuesday night when we were busy packing for Comic-Con. When have I had time to sit and watch it in a decent shape? I'm not going to watch it on my phone the first time. As we're standing there, knowing that the Hall H is about to let out or is letting out, the line, which always had 20, 30 people in it, suddenly starts growing. This is mid-Saturday afternoon. Eventually, the people I'm talking to, we're all squished up against the wall behind the Paramount booth, right in the middle, of the famous exhibit floor there. It's thickening up, and I start seeing people. It's the flood of people. They're all Star Trek. And I hear people murmuring. They said, come over and get a poster. They said, come over. Well, they were giving away the Subspace Rhapsody poster and said, go back. They didn't do it at the door leaving the hall. They didn't do it in the fulfillment rooms. They a lot of times will give you a ticket and you go to some room and you get the thing from, all the franchises, studios, companies would do that to give away their free stuff rather than do it in the room. But this time they told people to go back to because they wanted people to go through the experience of the little video, getting the photo op and all of that, being interviewed for your comments. I'm sure promotion's going to do a big organic fans, why we love Star Trek reel. So be watching for that. But within the span of about 10, 15, 20 minutes, this thing became so bloated with people, with Star Trek fans, it was getting comical. And then I saw people getting a little worried, and some of the booth people and some of the hired help security folks were trying to clear aisles. And before you knew it, I heard whistles, and the actual firemen, firefighters, fire marshals were there to clear the aisle because apparently we had maybe 500 people, which is not a good thing to have. No one was in danger. You could have had, if somebody had tripped and fallen, it would have been hard, all that. All the reasons that you're supposed to have fire lanes clear. But I kept thinking, oh my God, Star Trek is popular enough to have fire marshals come clear the hordes. It's the 70s again. I tweeted that. I've still got the video. I want to put it up somehow. I hadn't had time to. But I'm thinking, what have we come to? And then it dawned on me. The upshot of this whole weekend. Oh, and my friend Helen Collins, she went as Badgie, good and bad Badgie. She won the entire comedy division side of the masquerade, the Comic-Con San Diego big masquerade, big event show. Gave up hours of her time to do it. A Star Trek character won one of the 2 divisions of the San Diego Comic-Con masquerade. I'm just piling these on the amount of markers there are for Star Trek. So congrats, Helen. I've told her already, but the people, the panels, the organic, the pink uniforms, which made perfectly. So yay. The fire marshal meltdown, which again, it was nobody's fault. It kind of took everybody's surprise. It was a good, thank goodness nothing happened, or it could have been a bad surprise, but it was a good surprise. Some of the events people from the studio I saw and told them that, look how popular Star Trek is. It's the 70s again. They were only half smiling. They had things to deal with. But this is what I'm saying, kids. So you wonder, my theme for this week, I think, even though I kind of raised an eyebrow, I did my Vulcan reaction. But when Paramount Plus went ahead and did a Hall H, even, obviously observing all their members wouldn't have let them. But even with the strike protocols and knowing you had nothing really human to put up there, I'm really thinking that the strike's loss, the other studios' loss, or the loss of all the other studios, was Star Trek's gain. And it wasn't just because of that. Now, look, some of these seeds were in motion. A year of Star Trek last year. I just think we're actually seeing Star Trek along with missteps everywhere. DC Universe continues to misstep. Is the Marvel superhero is the Marvel Universe, the MCU, is it finally running out of steam? Is it losing its sliced bread status in the world? Star Wars is doing its shows, and there's more Star Wars hourage. They'll never catch up to Star Trek still. Not that it's a contest, but they won't with these little short seasons. Star Wars is not exactly burning the war. There's no real mega franchise right now. And it's almost like they're all taking a breather for whatever reason. And here comes little Star Trek powering on. Yeah, strikes are happening right now. And yeah, we're all pissed about Prodigy. A couple of people I know were cosplaying, but in service to the strikers, they only cosplayed anime, which was awesome. So, you do you, everybody. Whatever you're feeling like doing to support it'll be supportive, just contributing to some of the community fund that's out there for not just the writers and the actors on strike and the water and the heat and the ice cream and the cold drinks, but also to the entire Hollywood community that is, as callously as one of the producers said, about everybody will be losing their homes by October. They'll be kicked out of their apartments and losing their mortgages. That's the cynical end of it. But yeah, the supporting the charities and the funds in the industry and from without that are supporting all those folks, because there's a lot of little people who just work on staffs and crews who are having a rough time now with everything shut down, and looking for some of those exceptions to the rules that are fine. They're not shady. They're totally fine to go do. Animation, gaming, commercials, those kinds of things. Industrial films, narrated films, documentaries that are independent movies and TV, pilots that are independently produced for now. All of that is still trying to happen and moving along. In fact, I know some Star Trek actors were in San Diego to pursue some of that, not to appear to promote their Star Trek, but to pursue some of that. You getting a picture here? Strike or no strike, it felt like Star Trek was on a surge. By having the strikes and the absence of everybody else, you lost all that spotlight attention competition. Not that there was a lot to spotlight on stage, although, Scott Mantz is awesome. But he wasn't as excited as Scott can be. He was not going to bring back the whole franchise by himself. That 1 hour did. Those old scientists did. And I'm curious to watch and see if we have any tickers to see how much, because the animateds unfairly, both Prodigy and Lower Decks, their numbers, however you measure it, are nowhere near what Picard and Strange New Worlds and even Discovery, their numbers are nowhere near that. How much of a bump Lower Decks is going to get. And by streaming, you should see it immediately. We don't have to wait for the next season, but the next season's coming soon. It'll be interesting to see if there is a strange new bump for Lower Decks coming out of this, because they all got their share of attention. Then we turn around and do the ordinary show with the Klingon, and then we have Subspace Rhapsody, which is dropping the Thursday of Vegas next week. I've seen memes talking about live streamers and podcasters and bloggers going bonkers right now with all of this dropping so fast. And you know what? Soon enough, we'll be back in a fallow time. It's 2 weeks And then we'll have 2 weeks here. And then Lower Decks will start up with 2. So that'll only be 9 weeks. 2 will be in the first week, unless there's some shenanigans on the back end as well. And by early November, we will be out of Fresh Trek until the horizon. We'll see. But for right now, Vegas Trek is one thing, and it's its own critter, and it's the family reunion. But when you use Comic-Con San Diego as a barometer of, as I used to say, if Star Trek is getting a table at the big kids table, a seat, and are they in a high chair or did they get a grown-up chair at the big kids table? They not only had the big, I think they were carving the turkey this year. Now, maybe that's overstating it a little bit. Lots more to see. But if nothing else, the atmosphere was open, the doors were open, and Star Trek came right on in. And you know what? It all didn't trickle down from the studios. There was so much grassroots love for so much Star Trek. In the subtlest of ways. People not on a payroll, people just showing their stuff. And if that's the mood and the place where Star Trek is right now, strike or no strike, then imagine what's going to happen when, these other franchises right now that are struggling to find their way, we can have a Barbie, we can have an Oppenheimer, we can have whatever little hit movie comes along. But if people really are tiring of the big franchise, mega franchises, especially if they're superheroes, and none of them ever have uniforms that match, okay, unless they're the Fantastic Four. If nobody has, anything outside of their pajama bottoms, and Star Trek can find its way back, that would just be awesome. And again, I'm not into this. I'm not waging bets. I'm not keeping score. I just go back to how Star Trek deserves for as much of the world to know about it as possible. And they haven't had that ability the last 20 years, unless they had a good friend who was dragging them kicking and screaming into everything Star Trek. And I would hear anecdotally from folks who were the active person, and their plus one wasn't a bored, disinterested partner or friend. They were somebody they were bringing along, and something had sparked them. Maybe it was Strange New. Maybe it was Lower Decks. Maybe it was even Prodigy. I did my poll in the room. We had more and more people, 4 or 5 for the JJ movies, 4 or 5 for all the more recent shows. Yeah. DS9 was still the one that turned. In 420 people, we start to see the smatterings of all of those. But if nothing else, it got people back out. People watched Picard because of Next Gen. People are watching Strange New, enjoying Spock and Pike and Chapel and Uhura. And it's just a well-made show, the chemistry. You might have canon issues at times, and we talk about those, or wondering why they did this choice, not that one. But you cannot deny the cast has a lot of fun together and sparking off each other, which is essential for any Star Trek, and some we know it happens in more than others. So those are all good signs, much less these crazy animated shows and those crazy Lower Deckers. And I said it was, we had the invasion of Toontown this week. So yes, is that a bold statement to make? Who won Comic-Con? It was Star Trek. Maybe there's a case to be made for others. Maybe no one won Star Trek, no one won Comic-Con. But if anybody did, if somebody stepped into the breach of 2023 and owned it, and even didn't realize how they were going to own it, I would say that's Star Trek. One last barometer, our friends at Hero Within, Tony, the ones who are selling those incredible Picard bomber jackets, the leather jackets, and also the other Star Trek themed gear, they were doing cartwheels. Here's a topper on the cake for you. I talked to them on Friday evening. They sold, they're recent. This is their third. They had the year before pandemic and now this. And of course, the Picard popularity, those leather jackets are just, there's another licensee that has them too, but this was just out the roof. They were into the stratosphere with sales already. Tony told me when he wasn't giving Terry Metalis his own, not a good one, but one of the gray ones fixed up with patches. Quartermaster office right there. No, Tony told me that their Thursday and Friday sales alone topped their whole last year's sales last year. And I don't know about you, but there's no better barometer for Star Trek at day's end than the almighty dollar. And that spoke volumes. So they were ahead of last year, but they did it in 2 days. What does that tell you? And the Thursday and Friday, not Saturday and Sunday, which was more icing on the cake, very thick icing. But the first 2 days of the con, they beat their sales from last year. And they sell only Star Trek wearables. Yeah, give them a look. And they also sponsored the Energize Lounge, the free coffee that I didn't collect on. If you saw people's posts from over there too. Anyway, this is why I say, who won Comic-Con? I'm going to say Star Trek, if anybody did. If you're watching later on YouTube, I'm going to end it here. You live folks, don't go away though. But for right now, summer will be here for a few more weeks, and the fall is awesome too. And if you want, come to LA if you're not already, and do a Trekland Treks with me. It's customized away missions for you. I will work with you to set it up. We'll go to 4 sites in a day, have a fast food, hopefully very California fast food lunch. I'll pick you up at your hotel, take you back, help you wrangle any of your cosplay, your props, your stuffed animals, whatever it is. Help you with your photos, your video. Be happy to do it, okay? And of course, most of all, I got to thank our growing army here of our Patreons, our TTLers, our TTL Club, Diana Hopkins, Lawrence Todd, Justin Porteous, Chris Jiggins, Comedy Forecast. I'm a Comedy Forecast. Robin Wilson, Anne-Marie Siegel, Galinda Bruton, Pranakasha Productions, and Andrew Jazimski. And our other tier, our TLL Live Wires, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Helbjörg Gunn Johnson, Alan Huenzi, Dave Gregory, Tobias Rex, Donna S. Runyon, and Casey Shefsky. Looking forward to seeing a bunch of these people at Vegas as well. If you want to help out, it's near the end of the month. You can still jump in for this month. It's just $5 and $10. Simple levels with a shout out. I need to crank out the new round of access to our Portal 47 early generation interviews. I don't mean when people were kids. I mean our backstagers in the first 3 or 4 years of Portal 47. We'll get that out pretty soon. It's crazy time right now, so bear with me. Patreon.com/Trekland Live if you want to help out. I keep it simple because if you're going to do that, you might as well just jump into the portal, portal47.net. But of course, it is Tuesday, and there is, as of today, a new Trek Files, as always, on Tuesdays most of the year. We are glad to welcome back the one, the only Jake Sisko, Sirach Lofton, and talk about, yes, casting and diversity in Star Trek. And we're pulling out some TNG 1989 memos from Gene's files in the Star Trek Next Gen office. You want to check that out. You can get the podcast anywhere, but if you want to see the documents and comment, you need to go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Trek Files. We'd be thrilled to have you aboard there and build that community. Otherwise, community-wise, I'm everywhere. Still on Twitter or X. Do I have to redo this now? Gag me. Same thing with Mastodon. Same thing with Blue Sky as soon as I can. I thought I put in for my Blue Sky months ago, and apparently not. I had to redo it. Oh, well. And post. And you go down the line. What will come? I'll try to be there. I will be out there. Instagram is awesome these days, though, even though it's meta with Facebook. Facebook, we're still here. Larry's Trekland. If you really want to hang in there, like a lot on the chat here are, portal47.net. And hey, Portal 47ers, I haven't got the email out, but our guest is going to be the great Mark Wade, who was there for the Digital Revolution Online, worked with actors, worked with the early day internet with a lot of firsts. I was thrilled to be there with him. The first generation of StarTrek.com. And yes, when it was Continuum. And yes, when it all started in the Paramount Digital Kitchen with the first movie website in history. Do you know what that is? I'll do it. I'll do trivia. I'll see if anybody knows what the first movie website in history was, because Mark worked on it. Anyway, that's what's going on for Portales. You got a sneak peek. Otherwise, everybody else, if you are leaving us now, hey, so glad to have you with us. Check us out. We're here. If you're watching later on YouTube, we're here at 1 p.m. Tuesdays, 4 Eastern, and around the world. 9 p.m. in the UK and 10 in Central Europe. Okay. Glad to have you with us. Sound off. For now, if I'm leaving you, just stay healthy. Do all the things. People were still masking at San Diego Comic-Con. There was a report of someone who was COVID positive walking around the floor and the alert going. They had pictures. Not trying to dox or stalk them, just protect people. Fandom is generally so trusting and open and honest, and we did our bit for the pandemic, I would say, for the most part. And but there's still plenty of diseases hanging around out there. Just take care of yourself, and the sunscreen and the heat and all of that. Alrighty. Oh, and stay woke. Check your sources. Don't fall for any garbage. And if it seems bizarrely weird, it actually still might be true. I didn't know about the Texas race massacre until I was in my 30s, and I grew up in Oklahoma. So, in all cases, check the sources when you stay woke. Hashtag. Trek well, everybody.